This presentation is a continuation on the human resource issues internal, and today we're looking at change management and understanding the significance for human resources in managing change. And specifically, change management, when we're referring to change management, we're talking about situations of new technology involving consultation and communication and mergers and acquisitions as well. So, first and foremost, change management is an ongoing process. It happens in the organisations that we're specifically studying, those organisations that have a global um, significance and involved in lots of different markets. Now, as you're looking in markets by their nature are dynamic, they're constantly changing, and um, the bigger the market, the under more pressures it is. So that the dynamism is higher. So from an internal point of view, the organisation may have to change. From an external point of view, in terms of the pressures, the change may have to be adapted to. So it's all about the adaptation to all of these pressures. Okay, it's about the ability to be flexible with all these things that are occurring, which, as mentioned, is linked to internal pressures and external influences as well. So when we're talking about change management, we're talking about the short-term, long-term planning, and in that, once you plan, you implement it, control, review the effects of the organisation, adapting to the change. At the same time, when you're trying to put through change, change has to occur. You're trying to minimise the resistance to change, particularly within your key stakeholders, and this often is the big problem. So when we're talking about these key stakeholders from an HR point of view, remember human resources is not just the employee. We're also talking about the managers, and we're also talking about the leaders. But obviously, there's a hierarchical process. So when there's a change occurring, or something which is facilitating a change, or preempting a change, leaders will get the first wind of it. They'll see it on the horizon. They will adapt their systems to make sure it fits in with their culture and what their organisation is all about. They'll relay this down to the managers, who will therefore work within the systems with the employees to ensure that they adapt in the way seems fit. So really, change is something which is ongoing, it's ever present. So really, in terms of the leaders and managers' point of view, this shouldn't just be one-offs, or they shouldn't just be random occurrences. It's in a constant state of flux. So every business has to cope with change in one way or another. Obviously, at the front line, the humans, okay, the human resources, they're the ones who are causing change. I mean, can't think off the top of my head of an example whereby technology can adapt to changes in society. Um, so it's very important to understand that the human resource function is at the forefront of any sort of changes that need to occur in an organisation. And added to that, things such as making sure that they are aware, human resources are aware of what's happening, that they're suitably in a position whereby they can cope, and if that means training, that's the best thing. So really, these key stakeholders play a very important part. But as examples of change management, from an internal point of view, it could be changing specific systems, it could be production system, quality control system. It could be the overall restructure of the company, the organisation, to adapt to these problems. It could be the problem that there isn't enough trained employees at present. So therefore, an adaptation or redeployment of existing human resources within the organisation's structure may be appropriate, and that is a good example of change. These can be managed and analysed through specific models. Although we're not going to dwell too much on these models at this point, this is something that it's a tool that an organisation can use. On the flip side, externally, these are occurring all the time in these global marketplaces. Political unrest, big decisions being made. The recent Brexit decision, recent presidential election has also caused a lot of tidal rip waves, shall we say, across lots of other markets. Choosing to expand into global markets, a change of strategic direction may open up opportunities. And a big one as well is government regulations. Classic is health and safety laws. So, sorry, to go back, external factors have this impact internally. These external factors may be occurring, which means that these types of changes need to be facilitated. These types of issues can be analysed and can be predicted to an extent through using some sort of PESTLE analysis, for example. So very often when we think about change in the way that which our society operates, we think sometimes that if we can see a change, we can plan it, it goes through stages, it's predictable, we can manage it. And from that point of view, our leaders and our managers know what's going on, they have control. And to that end as well, external factors are outside of the control of the organisation. However, in reality, it's very arbitrary, it's very unpredictable, and it can come off the back of a catalogue of different events. And really, sometimes only hindsight clearly reveals these. So, therefore, it is always identified as a key skill, particularly for leaders, is that whole idea of managing change, managing this in a way, understanding and being able to adapt to change in this sort of process is very good to be able to do, and it's very convenient. However, it's not always a possibility. Now, change comes in lots of different forms, and this is just a list of things that can be known as change. Technology, production. I mean, we're going through the digital revolution at the minute. Production methods, mergers, takeovers, economic factors, changing the interest rates, which are changing every minute as we speak. All of these type of things are things which are examples of how change must be adapted, or what can be used to change to the right way. So really, in terms of adopting to change, it's interesting because some organisations can see these things as being big barriers. Others can see them as being opportunities. So when one door closes for one organisation, it opens for another. The inherent problem of this is that there's a fear of change, and us as human beings, as social animals, we tend to be reluctant to engage with change. We tend to prefer to sit in our comfort zones. We like the routine. We know what's coming up. We like to plan for it. However, if you take that position as an organisation, it can generate inertia, as mentioned here, and stagnations. And the key thing with doing this is that other organisations, competitors, may not be taking the same position, may be getting ahead of you. So essentially, when we're going through stages as human resources, when we're adapting to change, there very often is a series of changes that needs to be stages that need to be overcome before we get compliance to the new way of working. And we're looking at refusing, ignoring it, frightened of it, begrudgingly accepting, maybe begrudgingly respecting the whole idea. Then all of a sudden you want to find out more, you're convinced, you're told, you internalise the change, and all of a sudden it's become part of the normal working practice. Now, this sort of process can be very long-winded. So really looking at this one, what we've got to understand is that our organisations, and there's many issues out there, organisations that are having to adapt to change, sometimes on a daily basis, and how do they utilise their human resources to basically make those changes more of an opportunity than a barrier, and how do they convey those changes so that they are offering a resistance to change from the human resources.